Sati, the word sends chills down your spine. It conjures images of a horrific practice, a practice that haunted India for centuries. Imagine a young widow draped in white forced onto a burning pyre. Her crime? Outliving her husband. Sati was the ritualistic suicide of a Hindu widow on her husband's funeral pyre. It was considered the ultimate act of devotion, a way for a wife to prove her unwavering loyalty even in death. But let's be clear, Sati wasn't about love or devotion. It was about control, about men dictating a woman's worth even after she was gone. This wasn't just some fringe practice. Sati was woven into the fabric of society, justified by twisted interpretations of religious texts. Widows were seen as burdens, their lives deemed meaningless without their husbands. They were ostracized, stripped of their agency, and often left with no choice but to submit to this horrific fate. We're going to unpack this dark chapter of history, peel back the layers of patriarchy and oppression that fueled this practice for centuries. Get ready, because this is a story about power, control, and the women who dared to resist. If you found this chapter insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to support our channel and stay updated with our latest content. To understand the roots of Sati, we have to dig into Hindu mythology. One name repeatedly pops up: Sati, the goddess. She was the daughter of Daksha, a powerful king, and the wife of Shiva, the god of destruction. The story goes that Daksha insulted Shiva, and Sati, in a fit of rage and grief, self-immolated. This act of self-sacrifice was later manipulated to justify the practice of sati for mortal women. But let's be real, twisting mythology to control women, that's patriarchy 101. The irony is that Sati, the goddess, was a powerful figure, known for her independence and fiery spirit. Yet her story was used to strip human women of their agency, to box them into this submissive, self-sacrificing role. It's a classic case of selective interpretation, of using religion to serve a patriarchal agenda. And it worked. Over centuries, the practice of sati became deeply entrenched in certain parts of India. It was seen as a mark of honor, a way to elevate a woman to the status of a goddess. But beneath this veneer of piety lay something far more sinister: the systematic subjugation of women. Sati wasn't just about religious dogma, it was also deeply intertwined with societal and economic realities. Think about it. In a patriarchal society, a widow becomes a liability. She's a financial burden, without the social standing of a married woman. Property rights played a huge role in perpetuating sati. In many communities, women couldn't inherit property, so a widow became a threat to the male heirs, a potential obstacle in their path to inheritance. Sati, in this context, was a convenient solution. Get rid of the widow and her claim to the family's wealth. Then there's the social pressure. Widows were seen as bad luck, their presence considered inauspicious. They were ostracized, subjected to social isolation, and often forced to live a life of deprivation and humiliation. In such a hostile environment, is it any surprise that some women saw sati as the only escape from a life of misery? But let's be crystal clear. Sati was never a choice. It was a brutal practice often forced upon women who had no say in the matter. They were victims of a system that saw them as disposable, their lives valued only in relation to their husbands. Section 4. Voices of Dissent. Early resistance against sati. Even in the darkest of times, there were always those who dared to challenge the status quo. From the very beginning, voices of dissent rose against the practice of sati. Reformers, thinkers, and even ordinary people recognized the inherent injustice of forcing a woman to end her life. One of the earliest critics of sati was the Mughal Emperor Akbar. He recognized the practice for what it was, a barbaric act disguised as religious duty. Akbar tried to curb sati by introducing regulations, making it mandatory for local authorities to confirm that a widow was choosing to die of her own free will. But the fight against sati wasn't confined to the corridors of power. Across India, individuals and communities raised their voices against this inhumane practice. They wrote pamphlets, delivered fiery speeches, and organized protests, risking social ostracism and even violence to challenge this deeply ingrained tradition. These early resistors understood that the fight for women's rights was fundamentally a fight for human rights. Their courage and unwavering commitment laid the groundwork for the eventual abolition of sati, proving that even the most entrenched social evils can be challenged and defeated. Section 5. Colonial Intervention, the Abolition of Sati. The fight against sati reached a turning point during the British colonial era. While colonialism itself was a brutal and exploitative system, it also brought about a complex interplay of social and legal reforms. The British, influenced by their own evolving moral compass and pressure from social reformers in India and England, began to take a stand against Sati. One of the most prominent figures in this movement was Raja Ram Mohan Roy, a scholar and social reformer who tirelessly campaigned against Sati. He argued that Sati had no basis in true Hindu scriptures and was a distortion of religious teachings. Roy's efforts, alongside those of other reformers, put immense pressure on the British authorities to act. Finally, in 1829, the Governor-General Lord William Bentinck outlawed Sati throughout British India. This landmark legislation criminalized the practice, making it punishable by law. The ban on Sati was a major victory for the reformers, a testament to their unwavering commitment to justice and equality. But the fight didn't end there. The abolition of Sati faced resistance from conservative sections of society who clung to tradition. Even after it was outlawed, instances of Sati continued to occur, highlighting the deep-rooted nature of patriarchy and the long road ahead in the fight for women's rights. Section 6. Sati in modern India, echoes of a brutal past. We wish we could say that Sati was relegated to the history books, a relic of a bygone era. But the reality is far more complicated. Even in modern India, where Sati is illegal and widely condemned, isolated cases continue to surface. These incidents, though rare, are a chilling reminder of the persistence of patriarchal attitudes and the vulnerability of women in a society where age-old traditions often trump legal prohibitions. They highlight the fact that laws alone cannot eradicate deeply ingrained social evils. In 1987, the world watched in horror as a young woman named Rup Kanwar was burned alive on her husband's pyre in Rajasthan. This incident sent shockwaves through India and sparked a nationwide debate about the continued relevance of Sati and the urgent need to address the root causes of violence against women. The Rup Kanwar case led to the enactment of stricter laws against Sati, but it also exposed the challenges of enforcing these laws, particularly in rural areas where social pressure and traditional beliefs often hold sway. It underlined the need for a multi-pronged approach, one that combines legal reforms with education, awareness campaigns, and economic empowerment of women. Section 7. Sati's legacy, a reminder of gender inequality and the fight for justice. Sati may be a thing of the past in its formalized ritualistic form, but its legacy continues to cast a long shadow on India and the world. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked patriarchy and the devastating consequences of gender inequality. The story of Sati is a story of power, control, and the systematic subjugation of women. It's a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own societies and the ways in which women are still marginalized, discriminated against, and subjected to violence. But it's also a story of resistance, of courage, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. It's a story about the reformers, activists, and ordinary people who dared to challenge the status quo, who risked their lives to fight for a more just and equitable world. As we reflect on the dark legacy of Sati, we must remember that the fight for gender equality is far from over. We must continue to challenge harmful traditions, dismantle patriarchal structures, and empower women to live lives free from violence, discrimination, and oppression. Only then can we truly break free from the shackles of the past and create a future where every individual, regardless of gender, is treated with dignity and respect.